What would you think is the most common, one of the most common reasons why people have these anger problems, that they get very angry when things are not going well, facing bad beats? What is usually the reason where it's coming from?
Usually it's entitlement issues.
Okay.
So, especially if it's bad beats, they believe for whatever reason that if they get their money in good, they deserve to win. And they're viewing the game as a short-term game like chess or another sport, rather than viewing it as something where you're winning like a casino over a long period of time.
Yeah.
So entitlement creates that, and then you need to look at where that entitlement comes from. And when I'm doing sessions with players, quite often they're going to have issues with feeling that they've been treated unfairly in life.
So during their childhood or somewhere in the past.
Yeah. So, they were blamed for something they didn't do or whatever it might be. So there's this trigger in the background that things that are unfair are particularly painful for them. And then their races get cracked when they're deep in an MTT, and it's incredibly unfair to them. It feels so, it triggers this anger program, this anger cycle. And when it comes to unfairness, almost everyone has stories of things being unfair in their life because life isn't fair.
So, true.
So it's why so many people see these problems. But I would say entitlement is typically the biggest factor when it comes to problems with bad beats.
What would your recommendation, like some practical advice to those people that cannot afford a mindset coach?
Yeah, I mean, first off, the thing I would do is start journaling. An exercise for doing this, which I find very powerful, is the person thinks about whatever it is they're struggling with.
Yeah.
So let's say it's anger entitlement issues at the poker table. So they bring that emotion up. So what does it feel like to you physically when your aces get cracked, if that's the thing that triggers you?
Yeah.
And typically, most people will have some level of physical symptom that they feel.
Yeah.
So I get really hot, or my chest gets constricted, or I get a headache, or I can feel it. Some people say I can feel it in my fists. However it is to you, and just become very aware of the physical sensation that you get in that moment. The next thing to do is then to take some time and actually think about other things in your life that have made you feel that same way, and then write them out. So I felt that way when Mrs. Smith in English class made me read and I made a mistake in front of the class. I felt that way when my dad said this. I felt like that. And actually spend some time, maybe spend half an hour, just really trying to think through, calm yourself down and think through as many of those memories as you can, and try and get an idea of what sort of story has been created that makes you feel entitled, or things not good enough for you, whatever it might be. And then once you've done that and you can see some idea of the framework that's been created there, start to then reframe those memories and look at the reality of the memories. So if it is your teacher told you that you're never going to be good enough, okay, so as a 7-year-old, you might have taken that really seriously, and you might have believed I'm never going to be good enough because my teacher, who was an adult in authority, said this to me. Looking back on that, you might see that she was a stressed out 40-year-old struggling with 30 kids in a class. And it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
So you start to reframe it as, oh, my teacher was having a bad day. She wasn't good at her job that day. Rather than, I'm innately not good enough.
Yeah.
And you start reframing how you view these memories. And, I genuinely believe it is much more powerful doing this with someone else because, like you said, people don't like going to the very painful stuff, and they usually push themselves away from it. So it is quite hard to work through your own most difficult memories.
Yeah, exactly.
However, as a starting point, this will give you an understanding and a framework of how these physical sensations you feel now are connected to things that have happened throughout your life.
Yeah.
And that's sort of a good starting point for anybody. And there are lots of counseling services and therapists. It doesn't have to be, if you're looking to work on this, it doesn't necessarily have to be someone within the poker industry. Lots of students, if you're at university as well, there'll be some kind of mental health care. So I would just say also really look around that there's probably more available to you than you think there is if
Yeah.
you're willing to reach out. And then as you become more successful, if you're reaching the highest stakes of the game, then typically it's worth investing in someone who also is working in the poker industry, let's say.
Yeah.